dun, 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 dun. Oh yeah. That's a great connection. Huh. Okay. Let's see here. Why is that doing so poor? Can't all be the storm. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't stream from like a Faraday cage made of metal. That might be a big problem for streaming. Yeah. But think of all the electronic interference that I could receive from the outside world. No, that'd be bad. We'll be starting here shortly. Please do bear with the internet issues. Just finishing some behind the scenes stuff, yeah. Totally has nothing to do with any of this. Yep, nothing to do with this. Entirely internet issue related, probably. Alright, let's put that down. Now my mouth's kinda dry. That'll fix it. Hello. Oh, I see. You too, huh? Big storm's going through. Not surprised. Yeah. I don't know if YouTube actually likes that being on stream. I don't know. But we're here now, so... Here we go. Hey there. Hi there. Hyde here. Let me just hit the recording button. Yeah. It's good that the migraine is on the lower side for you. I've been dealing with it since last night, even though the storm has passed now as well for me. It's got me feeling... oh boy. You know when you get such a bad migraine that you start to feel nauseated? And, everything is just... yeah. The world kinda has a pulse to it. Yeah, it's been one of those kind of days. Yeah, well... I don't know about worse. Yeah. But, in addition to the lovely, correlation of migraines and big storms, there's also a correlation with my ISP having issues after big storms. So that might be a problem. No Windows, I do not need virus and threat protection. As far as I'm concerned, your operating system is malware. What was I doing? I was gonna buy some live bait, wasn't I? Yeah. Yeah, so there might be some ISP issues, a few more hiccups than usual, probably. Please do bear with it. I want live bait. Where's my live bait? Am I covering the live bait? I am. Yeah. It's not ideal, but you know, I can work with this for now. It may end up being a shorter stream. I can unpin this. But we're gonna be here for as long as I tolerate the world. Which is trying its best to melt my brain. I think we'll do fine, you know? Probably an hour at the minimum. That's what I'm gonna try and do. Internet willing. We can buy some of these new places. I don't really feel like fishing in Paris. Mute your intro music? There is no intro music. The intro music... There shouldn't be any intro music. The only music is the game music. Oh, oh. Are you thinking that I'm playing intro music? No. This is the game background music. Yes, this game has music. I really don't feel like going to France. But yeah, this music comes with the game, so... Yeah, it pulls double duty, right? I would not pick this for intro music. Never realized. Well, I did used to play intro music, you know? Way back in the beginning, I would pick actual songs. Sometimes I would play the quote-unquote song that I made. It's on this channel, in something akin to music playlist. I always meant to do more of that, but I haven't touched my jaw harp in a very long time. It's kind of sad, really, but that's all there is to it. This looks like a pretty place, but it looks like a lot of snags. Maybe we'll go to Richmond Lakes. Yeah, it kind of looks nice there, with the weeds and the grass. Well, no, I don't expect anyone's memory to work. In fact, my memory is quite awful. So, let's get into talking, right? That's what everybody's here for the talking. Not for the fishing game, I'm sure. Although I do like the fishing game. I'm an avid fisherman in real life, and it's getting to be that season. I think I said that last week, but it's getting even closer. Which means that, the desire to go fishing just increases exponentially every day. Yeah. So, I might be doing that. And I know my content has been pretty sparse this week. I'm sorry about that. I do have a video ready, but by the time I got the video ready, I realized that I didn't put out a short this week. And since most of my traffic comes from shorts, I'm going to ignore the community element. No, I'm sorry. Um, it was just bad timing on my part. By the time I edited the video, I realized I hadn't edited a short, and I put the short out first. That just means you're gonna get a video earlier next week, which is good, I hope. I'm not very proud of the video. It comes from that last recording session I did, where I'm gonna let you in on a secret here. I was a bit manic for that recording session. So the interview with Clown Hyde, um, the Jekyll one, I think. I don't know, the last one I put out, can't remember what it was. Oh, Mouse, yeah, Mouse MD. And the next one are all videos I recorded in the same session after a bout of insomnia. Like, I literally got out of bed and said if I can't sleep, I might as well work. And that's what I did. So there's going to be some periods of higher energy and maybe some mic peaking, because that just tends to happen. I don't know about anyone else, but when I get really tired and I enter a manic state after not sleeping very well, I have trouble controlling the volume of my own voice, which is probably not a good thing. It can give people the wrong impression about my content and how I usually act with my content. And yes, I do see the fish emoji. Uh, it looks like a tuna maybe, but it's very chubby tuna, you know? Tuna tend to be streamlined, so maybe it's a sunfish. Although I don't think it's a sunfish. I think it's just very stylized. More and more zombie. Well, there's like a progression, right? At first, you get tired, and then after you can't sleep when you're tired, sometimes you get something called a second wind, right? That second wind is really just a sort of mania. No high energy period for you? Oh, I see. Well, I have them. And when I record during them, you can tell the difference. So don't expect that kind of content too often, but that is what's going to come out next. It's ironically enough, um, I recorded Mouse MD after I recorded the next video, so it looks like there's a tie-in between the videos. I've been trying to do that more often, tie videos together. Barely get a first wind. Well, I hear that. I feel like the first couple hours of my day are a total wash. As soon as I wake up around 8 or so p.m. every night, I just can't think straight for the first 2 hours. Luckily, my work does not require me to think straight, so it's not too much of a hassle. But if I had to do anything that required me to actually think and formulate thoughts, I couldn't do it. The first 2 hours of my day are usually reserved for uh, mentally non-challenging tasks. So, yeah, I do that. And on days like today, I actually did get some work done, surprisingly enough. I was very worried because when I went to sleep, the storm was just picking up. The wind was howling. It was very windy. And I was starting to feel nauseated, like very badly nauseated. And the world was pulsing, right, to a rhythm that I just couldn't hear. It kind of made me think of Lovecraftian stories where uh, the protagonist ends up meeting Yog-Sothoth, and there's the trumpets, right? I don't know why I thought of that imagery, but I was close to my bedtime, and that's what I thought of, you know? Meeting the dreamer with the trumpets pulsing an ungodly tune. And that's pretty much how it felt. Um, Aside from that, the Centrum, yeah, the Centum, not the Centrum. Centrum makes fine daily multivitamins. I do recommend them. They're very easy on the stomach. I do prefer Centrum. Not that I'm taking them right now. Right now I have some different gummy vitamins. Old man talk with Hyde. Talking about multivitamins. No sidetracking. Um, yeah, the Centum stream was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time with it, and I really wanted to play that game, and I really couldn't wait for it. So I had a good time with that, and I know it wasn't very interactive. Um, that said, you know, think of it as bonus content, right? I still want to do these weekly streams, but from time to time I might add really want to play without, you know, too much interaction, because I want to focus on the story of the game. There are a couple of them out there like that. In a coma, basically. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it gets like that, right? I think the body really needs to do that if your body feels like doing that. You wanted to see... Oh, right. I did announce it in the Discord. uh, there's another plug, by the way. I have a Discord now. I'm not using it too effectively, but today there has been the addition of a fan art channel. Uh, I think it's more than a fan art channel, though. I want to add some of my own art, maybe. So maybe it's just going to be an art in general channel. Hyde-related art channel. I spelt it drafts, like the drafts written in, oh, I can't think of his name, the person who wrote Jekyll and Hyde. He spelled it that way as well. Classical British spelling. Oh, I did not play it again, no. I've been saving it. I want to play it again, and we may do that again this week. from time to time, I may add less interactive streams into the schedule at my convenience. I haven't really been feeling like playing games at the moment. In fact, the last couple of nights, the last week really, mostly what I've been doing is doodling on Kleki, the online art program, Kleki. I really like one of the brushes they have in that program, so I've been messing around with it, and if anyone wants to check some of the things I've doodled out, you can look at my Twitter. uh, I know that's not convenient for everyone, but, maybe now that there's an art channel in my Discord, I'll add some of the things I've been doodling to it. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's very good. I realize that streaming part of a game and not showing the rest of it, like, people get invested in that, and I wouldn't like... I don't like offline or off-screen progression either, unless it's like really grindy stuff. So I understand. I'm not gonna do that. Whenever I end a series on my channel, rather, whenever I don't pick a game back up, that's usually me saying I'm not playing more of this game for now, right? It's not me saying I'll finish this offline. I'll say yes. Unfortunately, everybody uses Twitter, right? I'm an old man, and I can barely understand Twitter. Here's a fun fact for you. The only reason that my Twitter account exists in the first place is because I wanted to interact with other VTubers. And I don't mean indies. When I was first getting into the VTuber culture, yeah, Blue Sky. I don't, I don't mind competition. I just don't think everybody is using it just yet. There are alternatives to every social media site, and yeah, I think it's great if they actually get traction. But I'm not an early adopter of technology, and once I learn how to use one technology, I'll use it until I can't. Um, there are no moral or ethical considerations there. There aren't. That's just the reality of it, right? I'm an old man, and I don't like learning new things about technologies. So, yeah, that's just the case for me. Yeah, yeah, I still don't even know how to use Discord properly. It's kind of ridiculous. There was a large period of my life where I was just averse to technology in general. Whenever possible, I would avoid using technology. So instead of getting like a stand mixer with a bread hook attachment, a dough hook attachment, I would just learn how to knead very wet doughs by hand. And then I would clean my walls because all of the dough would splatter everywhere. I'm pretty anachronistic if I'm not that old. Yeah. You gotta remember, I'm from the Victorian era here, so I have to be around 200 years old. Gotta be pushing it. What was I talking about? Right, so I've been doing a lot of doodling as of late. That's what I tend to do when I don't feel like, playing games or doing other things. I'll just mess around, draw things. Right now, it's mostly other VTubers, and, well, I don't know how much more I can say about certain things, but... uh, I have drawn something. I have birthed something into the world that may be seen by some people, eventually. I don't know. We'll have to find out. I'll have to ask, right? It was one of those collaboration type things where I have to ask what I can say to my own community. Uh, what community there is. Um, I was talking about something else, wasn't I? After that. I was talking about doodling, I was talking about Centum. Can't remember. Technology? Is it technology? See, I've been so brain fogged. Yeah, I birthed something. Well, the wording is what it is, you know? What was I gonna say? Um, I don't remember. Sorry. I was going to talk about... Anyway, uh, I have other videos in my backlog that I've been struggling to actually get recognized by my editing software. Like, they're videos from my old computer, my old hard drive that I transferred over. And, for whatever reason, my software is not recognizing them as videos. So editing them is kind of a pain. I think I have to convert them somehow, and in doing so, I'm going to lose quite a bit of audio quality. I don't think there's going to be too much of a loss of video quality, but there will be audio quality loss, which really irks me. So I've been messing around with finding ways of not losing so much audio quality. I've even gone so far as to try separating the audio from the video, and then trying to match them back together in post. I don't know yet. We'll find out. But I wanted to release one of the older videos this week, and that was part of the reason why I didn't. Because I could not get that edited. It just wouldn't let me. So, I don't know when that will be seen, but maybe eventually. I have a very large backlog of very bad quality content for one reason or another. And maybe it'll just never get released. That's okay though, you know? It's there if I ever need it. And maybe I can take clips from it. That's what I used to do when I wanted to make more shorts. But nowadays I don't do that. Because I feel like it's still kind of desire, right? I have to be happy with my own content to be releasing it. And sometimes I make compromises, but... Oh, that bird is very loud. Sometimes I make a compromise, but I don't really like making large compromises. And when I do, I try to do something creative with it. Like summoning the sea worm. The summon the sea worm video was plagued by frame rate issues. So I did my best to turn it into a sort of, I don't know, moving slideshow type presentation. I did a lot of editing for it, and the shorts I made for it were sort of like a storybook with moving pictures. That's what I was hoping I could do. And wouldn't you know it, the editing software that I used to make those had really complicated ways of kind of making that work how I wanted it to. And then shortly after, like a couple of months, they ended up adding simpler ways of doing exactly what I wanted to do. Rainy days or just days when I can't record. Um, that may be happening sometime soon. Hopefully it doesn't, but I have not recorded yet. I have not recorded anything since, well, you know, since I said last time I haven't played any games. I haven't been feeling it, you know? So I've mostly been, um, doing other hobbies, which in this case was drawing. And, oh, right, that's what I wanted to talk about. My earliest tweets, right. So my Twitter account was made, or at least used, to interact with Hololive VTubers for the most part. One of my earliest things was Kiara from Hololive EN, the first one. Hololive Myth, I believe it is. It's been so long I can't even remember. She held a Valentine's Day chocolate making contest. Multiplayer games? I'm not really feeling games at all, to be honest. That's why the Centum stream was so important to me, you know? Because I actually wanted to play the game. So, expect to see that again probably this week at some point. I don't know when. I'll probably give an announcement on Discord. We'll see. It's going to be around the same time, around 1:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when I like to stream. My mind is most active during these hours. after work and after everything else is done for the day, my mind can actually work properly and I can interact with people to some degree. um, but yeah, my tweets. So Kiara was holding a Valentine's Day chocolate making contest for one of the releases for one of her songs, and I ended up making biscotti and dipping chocolate on the biscotti, and I wrote I wrote little chocolate messages on the biscotti, and it was a huge failure on my part. I got accused of not making the biscotti, and yeah, I was utterly roasted by the chicken, ironically enough. Vampire hours, exactly. Some people are naturally geared towards nighttime activities, and some people are more diurnal. They like to exist in the daytime. Personally, I need more sunlight. I'm afraid for my vitamin D levels. Despite taking multivitamins and the like, I am afraid for my vitamin D levels. Yeah. Yeah, so she roasted me, and that was fine. It was fun. It was a fun interaction. Then I played some Mario Kart against her, and I ended up doing some less nice things. I let her win the first time I played against her. I stopped on the track and let her pass. But the second time, I was probably less kind. Night person. A lot of people are like that, especially in the modern era. Like, it didn't used to be the case that humans had the ability to exist in the nighttime. Like, they had to wake up every couple of hours to tend to the fire, but they didn't have electric lighting. So, nighttime existences have really been a modern thing. Modern appliances and conveniences have allowed for that. Before, you would have had to use, like, a gas lantern, using whale oil or something. Um, Now you can just turn on a light. Yeah, which is great. Then, probably my most widely seen tweet was shortly before Sana graduated. Sana was the Australian uh, member of council. Well, I can't say the Australian. One of the Australian members of Hololive Council. And I ended up baking a sonolite. Like, I wanted to make an actual bread dog. And I did. I'm fairly proud of what I accomplished. It wasn't perfect, but you know, trying to sculpt bread and turn it into a dog, not easy. You'd be surprised. I actually ended up doing it twice, because shortly after I did it, and she did recognize it. I was noticed by Senpai, so major bonus points to me as a VTuber, right? But shortly after she did retweet and talk about it or whatever, um, yeah, she announced her graduation, which was very sad. So I ended up making another bread dog, yeah, for the graduation purpose. Yeah, it's a niche kind of thing, right? But so are PNG tubers and VTubers in general, right? Like back in the day, there really weren't any options, right? You had Hololive, you had Niji, and you had a few independent EN VTuber that I saw at that time. Was Nanners, and I know a lot of people don't like Nanners, but her streams were entertaining enough. And then Hololive English student, well, it was a lot more fun, right? It was just a lot more fun. Um, Ina had her Lovecraftian elements, which was an instant draw for me, and yeah, I could watch a bunch more VTubers, which I thought was just the neatest thing at the time, right? That anime was made real. I know it's probably a very strange thing for an old man like me to enjoy anime idols, but I don't know. I think there's some artistry to it, right? I think it's the ultimate version of becoming a different thing as an actor or actress. Although I guess the term is just actor now. So I don't know. I really enjoy it. I like I like doing it myself. That's why I'm doing it. Yes. I'm sure this sounds like complete and utter nonsense to most people. That will not stop me from talking about it. Because this is part of my VTuber journey, you know? I'm a PNG tuber partly because of those VTubers that I used to watch. Like, I was big into, streams with no cam, and, eventually I got into some streams where people showed their face, like Kraken. Kraken was a big one for me. I think Kraken's very innovative with his content. He's always trying something new. He, might do the same thing over and over, but he's always trying something new with it. And for a while he was on, like, an AI kick, where he was just exploring the boundaries for what AI technologies could do on a live stream. I thought that was pretty neat. A lot of people didn't really like it. They thought it was annoying to have an AI chatting assistant, I guess, talking over him. And I get that. I get that too. Sometimes, even if you're an innovator, your ideas don't exactly, I don't know, land. They don't they don't meet your audience, right? But that doesn't mean that you should stop trying to innovate. You should still have fun with it. Because ultimately, when you start streaming for a long time, things can get stale, things can get boring, and you need something to keep it fresh for yourself in order to keep going. Like, I didn't realize how much work and effort and time streaming and making content would be. I have to do so much that I thought would just be, oh, you just turn your computer on and you start playing a game. No, no, that's wrong. That's not what you do. um, I write notes for all of these streams. Whether or not I get to them is another issue. But I write notes for all of these fishing streams at the very least. Yeah, I do have that issue right now, where I'm just not feeling like gaming right now. Um, so I'm gonna be looking into doing other content. But even that, I just haven't felt the desire to set up my streaming stuff. And yeah, I haven't really been feeling the greatest. Like, physically, I've not been sleeping very well as of late. Even Resident Evil Degeneration is barely helping. So, you know, there are physical issues exacerbating the sort of burnout that I'm feeling. But, I have so many opportunities for content that I want to make and can make now that I've presented them for myself. And, I just have to do it. That's the hard part. Just having to do it. I don't... Here's the thing, though. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my own content. Um, I will go over drafts in my head before I ever put anything down in writing. Like, I'll go through a couple different drafts, different versions, different things I could say, and, eventually I'll write them down, and maybe from there I'll start recording. Or maybe afterwards I'll revise the scripts and say, actually, I really like this. Maybe I could add more of it. Or I really don't like this, can I get rid of it? And I do that a couple of times too, usually. And then I'll do a couple of recordings or different takes. But the indie game content is a lot easier, which is why I've relied on it so heavily as of late. All I have to do is react to the game I'm playing, add some comments, maybe roleplay as a different persona. Yeah, yeah. Physical and mental health are linked, and taking care of both of them is the best way to ensure a long career in anything, really. So that's really what I've been trying to focus on as of late. And I think I'm doing better. I managed to get some sleep last night, and despite the headache, you know, things are okay. I think things are okay. It's just I don't feel like making content right now. So I'll get back into it. That's not going to be a problem. I do like playing games, and I like indie games. And I have a bunch of games that I haven't played that aren't indie games. Longer things like on the Switch or on Steam, things that I paid for and just never got around to playing. Because I kind of feel like it would be a waste for me as I feel to not be at my best when I'm playing these games that I actually want to play. So I get in this weird loop where I feel like if I play it during a period where I'm not feeling the greatest and I don't really think I have much to say, that'd be a waste of the game that I paid for, right? So that's a weird consideration I have to make. I never used to think about that, but as a streamer and content creator, now I think about it. I want to give people the best experience with the game as possible, because if I'm enjoying the game, hopefully others will too. Watch parties. I'm considering movie streams. There are a couple public domain movies that I still want to watch, and I haven't done one in a while. So that would be pretty easy. I don't think I'd be doing a Jekyll and Hyde reacts to them because it doesn't make sense. I still have to edit the rest of that Ghostbusters video because I really want to play the Ghostbusters video game. I'm getting to the point where I might just say, you know what? I'll just start a new save, and if I ever finish that video's editing, I'll just upload it, and it'll be a separate timeline. A separate timeline kind of thing. That's about where I am with that. But I want to finish Centum first, and as far as I know, it's a 5 to 6 hour game, so it should only be another stream or two, I think. I played a bit of it, the first stream, I think 2.5 hours. So I should be about halfway done, if those reviews online are correct. I don't know. It's just, I don't, I don't want to take a break, right? I don't want to stop. Stopping for me is usually a bad thing. When I stop, that's usually the end of it. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to take a break, which makes burnout a very real concern. So I have to be very careful. Reducing is the best way for me. So that's what I've been doing as of late. Reducing the content that I put out, but still making it so that I don't stop completely. And it's been kind of restful. I've appreciated it, right? I'm just not there yet. I'm just not back into the grind. We'll get there, though. I have high hopes that these new projects that I want to work on will be conducive to me wanting to work more, right? They're kind of content that I've been kicking around for years now, in fact. The introduction of Brother Id was really my opportunity for myself to make a certain style of content that I've been wanting to make. I'm excited for it, which means it's probably not going to come out for a while, because I want it to be good, right? I want it to be the best piece of content that I make in that vein of content. I'd also like to do some more reading or not streams, but reading videos. I think my voice is a lot better these days. It's getting a bit croaky again, because I haven't been talking and recording, but I do want to do more readings. Yeah, yeah. It was never really supposed to play games. It was never supposed to be a gamer. It was supposed to give sermons about words and songs and ideas. He was supposed to be the person presenting a different perspective on media in general. And I really want him to do that again, right? Like, in the original Midnight Mass that I put out, in that original stream, I think I wrote about uh, Peter Gabriel as a prophet, because I really enjoy the song Book of Love. A lot of people really enjoy Peter Gabriel's Book of Love. I think it's a beautiful piece of music. I think the lyrics are wonderful. I think the music itself is great. And Peter Gabriel has a fantastic voice with quite a lot of range. He doesn't use it too much in Book of Love, but it's a great song. It's one of my favorite songs. It's not my favorite song, but it's one of my favorites. I think it's just a beautiful human emotion captured in a song, and it. I think it's part of the human experience to feel things, right? To feel emotions and not be able to describe them. But I wanted to give a sort of description for those kind of things where media makes you feel something. So it's going to be, or it was supposed to be, a more personal endeavor, a more personal series of content where I talk about things that I enjoy, words that I like, music that I like, and I try to give it a new perspective. I try to make it something. It's not elevating it, but I think the idea originally came from the cigarette poetry stream that I did. And if anyone here hasn't watched the cigarette poetry stream, it was one of my favorites. All I did was play around with the pretentious poem generator on itch.io, and it was just pretentious fake poetry cobbled together bits and pieces from the program on itch.io, and most of the poetry involved cigarettes. So, I tried to give that meaning as if it were written by a human and they were actually trying to express something. And I really enjoyed that. So I tried to do that more. I tried to make id a character that would be able to do that with any piece of media. And I wanted to cover any piece of media that I wanted. So I made it a religion, right? I made it a cult. Um, Pretty much just, I don't know, worshipping words and the meanings behind them. I figured if I did that, if I made any word the word of Aegis, the word of the god of the cult, that would give me enough grounds to actually talk about anything I wanted to. That's what I mean by an opportunity, right? I gave myself that opportunity intentionally, and I just haven't used it. I feel like that. I really do that a lot as a PNG tuber. I give myself a bunch of opportunities, and I just never use them. Um, I'm always feeling like it could be better, so I should put off doing it. If you'll notice, I have more outfits than I do expressions. I have more alternate models than I do expressions, which is not the norm for a PNG tuber, right? I have this nice fishing outfit. I have my usual suit. I have Rawhide now. I have Jekyll. I have the Harrier Hide from Disco Elysium. I have Clown Hide, which I might retire. I don't know. I kind of like Clown Hide, but a lot of people don't seem to like Clown Hide. It's always surprising to me if anyone should ever like Clown Hide. I think it's his accent, right? I find the accent funny, and when I talk like that, my mind starts moving faster too, and I start saying things that I wouldn't usually say. It very much is like a transformative act to adopt these different voices and become these different people with their own unique personalities and thoughts and goals. Yeah, it ironically is more fitting that I do not have more expressions. In the early days, I was considering making more expressions, like a happy or a sad or any kind of expression really. All I ever got around to doing was tired eyed, which seemed to fit pretty well. Um, in reality, I don't know. I don't think I'm that expressive a person. Like, I can be. Uh, but my expressions typically are pretty flat. There are small, minor, subtle things that... Well, here's the thing, right? Expressions are about communicating, right? Expressions are nonverbal communication, telling the person you're talking to how you're feeling without saying it in words. So, they're very important. And as such, I try to make them as much as possible. But, at the same time, uh, sometimes I don't, right? Sometimes I don't feel like I have the energy to make those. It's not to say I don't naturally make expressions, because I do. A lot of them have become conditioned responses or ingrained, right? I think that's how it works in humans. Babies learn this. Babies learn how to smile. Or, well, I don't know. Smiling might actually be, like, reflexive. A lot of babies just naturally know how to smile. It's very strange. Some expressions might be reflexive, but a lot of them are learned, right? So, I guess I just took a lot longer to learn some of them than most people. Which is fine, you know? I am... I am very alien, yeah. Did you not notice my large head? I'm actually part gray alien, which is why I like wearing the tinfoil hat. Yeah, well, I don't know how humans act, okay? I really don't. I know how I act, and I realize that not all humans act like me. That said, sometimes I do treat humans like they act like me, which usually has disastrous results. So, varying degrees of success there. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Lifelong learning. That's the goal, right? Yeah. To learn every day of your life. To look at things with a new perspective, to learn and to grow. Starting to talk like Ed. Oh, right, right. I was gonna talk about, now that I'm drinking it, I was gonna talk about another hobby that I've been enjoying lately. Um, as some of you may know, one of my hobbies is making wine. I use the word wine here loosely, right? Beer is very specific. Beer is like malted grains, and sometimes hops and other spices. That's not what I do. Wine is very simple. Typically use a fruit, add sugar maybe, and then ferment it, right? Weird foul wine. Hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. um, yes, a lot of them are weird. I've never really cared too much for beer, and thus I've never really tried to brew it. But I do like brewing weird foul wines. Here's a fun fact. If I ever do have to drink a beer, usually I prefer stouts, which is very weird for me because they're very heavy drinks. And usually I'll just sip one stout for the night. Yeah, well, some of them are very normal. Some of them... some of them are weird. But yeah, if I ever get a beer, it's gonna be a stout. I like the bitterness of stouts, and I like that they're usually dry, right? Like, there are some sweet stouts, but if you don't know what you're getting, stouts tend to be press X to doubt. What I really like, though, is unaged corn liquor, and I should not say the real name of it. You might know it as the Dew of the Mountain. I grew up in a very rural place, and I don't know who made it. I don't know where it was made, but it was good. It was very good. And it came in a mason jar. So you know it was good. It was good stuff. Very clear. Very tasty. Very dangerous. I never bought it, and I never knew where it came from. I have to make that very clear. I never bought it, and I never knew where it came from. There were no transactions, and as far as I know, it could have just been regular store-bought alcohol made by licensed manufacturers and put into a mason jar. So please do not come after me. I do not have any more information than that. Okay? Okay? Yes, ATF, I know. Way too strong? Ah, that's the joy of it, though. See, here's the thing. I really liked it because of the strong ethanol flavor. I really liked the burn. I liked that it made my chest feel warm. And after some time of enjoying this beverage, made in the mountains probably, but maybe commercially made and legal, I acquired a taste for the ethanol itself, which is why I ended up drinking predominantly whiskey, right? Like, a lot of people think that vodka tastes like ethanol, or it doesn't have a taste at all. I don't agree. I think vodka has a very distinctive taste. Even high-end vodkas taste like vodka, right? And I can't do it. I can't do vodka. It's very gross to me. And here's the thing. There are multiple kinds of vodka. Some are made by fermenting sugar, some are made by fermenting grain, and traditional vodkas tend to be made by fermenting sugar beets. So, yeah. I think what's fermented ends up giving it a unique flavor. And none of them appeal to me. Whereas something like whiskey has a nice ethanol burn. I'm not a big fan of aged whiskeys. Like, a lot of people like the wood taste, the tannins, the vanillins of the cask that aged whiskey is aged in. That's not really what I want. I just want the ethanol. Vodka definitely does have a taste, though. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Um, hmm. How much should I talk about this tonight? um, I don't usually talk politics, because I don't want to, right? I think politics should stay out of VTubing. I think politics, is too heavy and too real a topic, so I prefer to keep content lighter. But this might be educational, right? In the USA, federal law doesn't allow for the standard citizen to distill spirits, right? There are some exceptions. We'll talk about those, I guess. But the distillation of spirits itself is disallowed. It is illegal to use a still to distill alcohol. And some of the laws are so strange. Um, that distillation is defined very strangely. Typically, when you think of distillation, you think of having a still, heating up a liquid, and separating uh, two fractions of the liquid, right? Typically water from alcohol. Although alcohol is miscible in water, so you're never going to get it 100%. Whenever you do a first run of a still, and I've never done this, I'm going to make that very clear, this is all theoretical knowledge. Whenever you do a first run, you're always going to get some water, because it's just a miscible solution. Um, Water and ethanol kind of bind together on a sort of molecular level, and it's very hard to separate them. So even distillation, you have to do that multiple times if you want anything high proof. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but do recognize that the more you do that, the more flammable the solution, or the vapors of the solution, become. So, yeah, a lot of people think moonshine is this very high proof stuff. It doesn't have to be. It can be anywhere between 30 to full on whatever percent you want, depending on how many runs you do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, because it is, again, illegal to do so in the USA. If you live in some place where it's not illegal to do so, by all means, have fun. But my main point here is that the ATF defines distillation in a very strange way to me. They include something they call, and distillation is typically thought of as a heating process, but you can also use freezing to fractionally separate alcohol from water. It's because ethanol has a different freezing point, a lower freezing point than water. So if you were to freeze alcohol, you could end up with a liquid solution of higher proof alcohol. You can't legally do that in the USA sometimes. It's, well, it's a gray area, right? They call it fractional distillation, but really, it's not distillation at all. Distillation does require heat. It would be better called fractionizing or fractionalizing. One of those products that they would trade almost like money. When printed money or minted money was scarce, they would use things like Applejack and whiskey. So I find these laws against freeze-jacking quite unfortunate for historical and cultural reasons. I don't know. I find it unfortunate because there are so many historical and cultural drinks that we'll just never be able to have because they use things like Applejack or Pearjack, and yeah, you just can't have them because it's a gray area. You're artificially increasing the ABV through a fractional process, a fractionizing process. So it's kind of like cold distillation. There's more to it than that. I'm not going to give you the exact details, but if you're ever curious, you can look into it. It's a historical thing, and I think it's important to learn about these historical and cultural moments. Now, to be perfectly clear... Oh, yeah, probably because I'm talking about freeze distillation. I do apologize for that. I did say that my internet would be kind of not great today. That's usually what happens with storms. I assume that we're still not back. I can see that I'm dropping a lot of frames. Yep. We are dropping frames. Let me take a look at that. Okay, that looks fine. That does not look fine. Is that better? No. No, it is not better. Well, I kind of wanted to finish talking. And we're dead. Yeah, it just completely dropped. Do do do. Are we back? We might be back. Where was I? I was talking about freeze distillation. The ATF might have put a freeze on my stream over that. I think it's stabling up a bit, but I'm still dropping a lot of frames, which is very unfortunate. The US government doesn't want you to know about freeze distillation, which has been a gray area for the ATF for many a decade now. They will never give a clear response when people ask about it, which I think is just ridiculous. A lot of times, because of the definitions of the ATF, which is basically just saying fractionating ethanol from water is distillation, freeze jacking becomes part of distillation, even though there are clear limits to what can be done by freezing alcohol. It usually can't get much higher than 18%, so I don't know. You'd have to look at a diagram for the freezing point, the eutectic point, things like that. And most people can't even read that kind of diagram in the first place, so it shouldn't matter. We should go and turn these fish in. I think we're back to being a little bit more stable. I'm not dropping as many frames. That's a big fish. To be perfectly clear, I should mention this. It is 100% legal for the average US citizen, regardless of age or territory, as far as I know. In every state, you can own a still. It is perfectly legal to own a still in the USA. The problem is, in every state, and because of federal law, you cannot distill alcohol, specifically, unless you have a special license or a commercial license. And when you have the special license, the ethanol you produce can only be used for fuels, right? It can only be used for... I'm gonna turn that down. That's very loud for me. It can only be used in fuels, right? Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but for a while now, ethanol has been added to gasoline to aid in, I guess, the resource crisis that is being past peak oil. But you can distill anything but alcohol you want. A lot of people have stills for making distilled water. A lot of people have stills for essential oils. Some people have stills for chemical reactions and the like. Every summer, right? Every summer what? Every summer... I'm not sure what we're talking about there. Maybe you are behind. Yeah, you can legally own a still. However, I don't... as much as I want to own a still, I don't think anyone would believe that I would own a still for anything other than alcohol purposes. Oh yeah, yeah. I think they increase or decrease it depending on, you know, the season, but I don't think it's just summer now. I know it used to be. They used to say that up to 10% ethanol and seasonal allowances would reduce or increase whatever it was in the range. Nowadays, I think it's just 10% flat. I know they add anti-freezing agents in the winter, which is a good thing. Here's a fun fact for you. Gasoline is not shelf-stable. If you're hoarding gas with the apocalypse years down the line, that's not going to do anything for you. If you add stabilizers, you might get a year, maybe two, but it's going to evaporate the volatiles pretty quickly. It's going to dewater, and you're going to be left with gunk in about 6 months if you don't stabilize it. And even after that, again, we're talking a maximum of about a year or two. Well, there are differences per area, right? Summer isn't summer everywhere, and US law is kind of gray. I know when I was living in a very rural place, they were still using winter blend gasoline during the summer. So I think people just do what they want, you know? And yeah, yeah. Maybe your area is nicer than that. But maybe I'm just behind the times. Yeah. It could be. What was I talking about? Right, wanting to own a still. I do want to own a still, and I want to extract things. It could be a lot of fun to do chemistry, like Nile Red or Nile Blue. Mostly Nile Red in my case. But, I don't believe anyone would believe for a second that I wasn't using it for my own alcohol. Twitch emotes? Yeah. There are no Twitch emotes here. That's part of the reason, a lot of people use Twitch. They want those emotes. I don't. I don't want the emotes. It's not because I don't like emotes, and I think YouTube's emotes are terrible. But, yeah, I never wanted to have my own emotes. It seems like extra hassle, right? Like, I don't plan on having, what do they call them on YouTube? Memberships? I don't ever plan on that, even if I could. I don't plan on monetizing. I don't plan on having advertisements on my channel. Unless I get so big that I would feel bad about throwing away free money. We're talking like maybe 500,000 subscribers, which I don't see happening. So I wouldn't worry about it. Otherwise, you know, doing the taxes of being an independent business owner just seems like too much of a hassle for me. I might as well not do it. I would be losing out in the long term if it were anything less than that, I think. Definitely losing out in the short term. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I don't feel like giving the IRS more money. I make too much alcohol, though, to get back to the point. There are different laws on what is legal for a person or a household sometimes to make. And I make probably half of what I'm allowed to per year. They do it by volume, which is the interesting thing. But it's perfectly legal for the average citizen to brew alcohol, I think in most states. I can't think of any where it isn't. They do have slightly different laws per state. But legally, you are allowed to go out there and brew beer up to a certain volume. You are legally allowed to brew wine up to a certain volume. And usually they get combined. So by volume, brewing beer is kind of a waste. I've never brewed my own beer. I don't like beer, and I think it's a waste of brewing, right? If you only have so many gallons of alcohol that you can brew per year, you might as well go for a higher percentage, right? Higher ABV. Yeah, in some states you do. Um, I know in some states that you need a special license for distillation. I'm pretty sure it's in all states you need a special license. But some actually let you do it. Um, in most states that I've lived in, and that I've looked at, which is more than one, more than a couple, you can legally brew your own alcohol up to a certain amount of volume, usually a couple hundred gallons or whatever else. Um, it's sell it, right? They're very concerned about people selling alcohol. So you can brew, you just can't sell in most cases. Again, I haven't been to every state, and I haven't looked at every state's laws. I'm just going off of the handful that I've looked at, so maybe I'm wrong for any particular state. Maybe some states are more restrictive than others. I'm fairly certain, I shouldn't say. Anyway, brewing beer would be a waste, in my opinion, of the allotted yearly allowance that I can brew. I do encourage people to take up the hobby, though. Like, I used to think that I really hated wines, but, I don't. Ah, prohibition. I think, mm, here's the thing about prohibition. Moonshining and the like of distillation predate prohibition, and usually when you go back far enough, it comes down to the government not getting enough money. And that's exactly what the case is in America. Uh, Again, this isn't about politics, this is about history and education, right? In America, whiskey used to be treated as a sort of ersatz money, right? Early America didn't have much printed money, didn't have much minted money. Definitely less printed, but it didn't have much minted either. So there weren't many coins going around. Sometimes coins didn't seem to have much value to people, even if they were a legal tender, and communities would often barter. One of the most bartered items was whiskey, and whiskey was produced in just about every farm that had excess grain, because we're talking about the preservation of excess goods here. It's a great way to preserve excess grain by fermenting it and then distilling it, so it's even more shelf-stable. It's easier to do than wine. Wine is not shelf-stable, right? You've got to keep it in very consistent conditions if you want to age it. Cool, certain amount of humidity, and out of direct sunlight. So that's hard to do sometimes. But if you distill it into a spirit, that's a lot more shelf-stable. You can pretty much just put a cork in the bottle and leave it wherever you want. As long as it's not on like a mantle or something, it won't evaporate either. The corks are usually pretty good. Yeah. But the US government didn't like that. Especially the early US government, which didn't have income taxes. So they were pretty much just taxing goods like paper. And whiskey was one of them. Whiskey, glass, paper, things like that. Tea, of course. Luxury goods were taxed. And when people were bartering, they weren't actually paying taxes to the government. And of course, this being one of the few sources of income for the government, they did not like that one bit. So to combat that, it's a messy history, if you look into it. There have been several skirmishes between the US government and whiskey producers. Interesting history that just never gets taught. I won't go into the details. Just take my word for it, or look into it yourself. And know that it's mostly about the US government not getting money. Yeah. Not prohibition. Money. That's the root of the problem here. Anyway, I encourage everybody to take up the hobby. It's very fun. History of booze? Hey now. I think it's a fun history. I do like brewing. It's one of my favorite hobbies. One of the few hobbies that I still do that I picked up in my adult life, you know? Usually when I pick up a hobby, I'll do it for a couple months and I'll put it down. And I'll say, well, that was fun, but I'm done with it now. But with brewing, it's very practical. I get to enjoy a lot of alcohol that I wouldn't usually get to enjoy. This is why I encourage everybody else to do it, right? I used to think that I hated wines, American wines especially. They're too sweet, and they keep getting sweeter by the year. And you know, the thing about European wines is, because of the American wine market, European wines have also gotten sweeter over the years. They're following suit because that's what market trends dictate. A lot of people expect some sweetness in wine. It's very rare to get a bone-dry wine. And here, I know, right? Like, a little sugar can enhance every flavor. It's just like salt on a steak. It can increase the flavor exponentially with just a minor addition. Well, it does fit, yeah. Okay, you don't have Twitter, but if anyone does have Twitter, you can check my About Me section, and you'll note that I have home brewing listed as one of my hobbies. That's very specific. Yeah, jarring and canning is good to mend it. Jarring and canning is very nice because, well, I like seasonal things, and I like them being at the best, freshest quality. Sometimes store-bought goods just aren't of the same quality, right? They're grown year-round, they're shipped to plants, they're packaged independently. It's much better, I think, quality, if you can pick them out yourselves. That said, canning, I never really got into it. I was always worried about botulism, so I've never really done it. But home brewing, definitely. It's very easy to do. You don't even need too many complicated things. You don't need anything complicated, really. And here's the best part about home brewing, right? Like, I was talking about American wines being very sweet to my tastes, and I don't like that. So I started making my wines bone dry. And you know what? I discovered that I really like bone dry wines. I can better taste the ethanol in them. And, as said, I get to experiment. I can make all kinds of weird flavors. I can make all kinds of weird wines, like, pumpkin wine. I've done pumpkin wine before. It's not terrible. I don't recommend it. It gets a weird kind of vegetal taste, but it's not terrible. And I've made other weird wines too. Am I actually reeling this in or not? I don't know. But, in addition to that, like, such as coffee. Hey, coffee is the end point here. Coffee is my favorite. It's not all about coffee wine. Coffee wine is just where I ended up, you know? It's just the one that suits me the most. But, before that, I liked reading about historical wines in the Americas and early Europe. We're talking like Victorian era and stuff. I was very big into historical things for a while there. I'd follow historical recipes that were barely recipes at all, and I would try them with wines all the time. Like, there are poems written about dandelion wine, right? But how often do you see dandelion wine in a commercial store? Very rarely, if ever. It's very hard to make. Very time-consuming to make a good dandelion wine. So I can understand why it's probably not common. But I've made a couple batches of dandelion wine now, and they're all delicious. Yes, Tasting History is great. Tasting History is a great YouTube channel. I was actually watching Townsend's before I started the stream. I do like it. It's a great channel. Very high editing value. Yeah, very nice. I was disappointed with the original garum video because he made a quick garum, but he recently had actually fermented the fish, which I thought was very cool. He revisited something that he had done and did it better. I'm by that. Townsend's is great. They just uploaded today an episode on cheese, about, I don't know, 16 hours ago now. I really enjoy the Townsends. I've been watching the Townsends channel since it was called Townsend's and Son, I think it was. And, yeah, it's just great stuff. Looking at how people used to live, and looking at the traditional recipes. I still find it fascinating that pudding was this baked or boiled kind of bready substance, like a giant noodle, right? Like traditional bread, or yeah, traditional fig puddings were baked in a bag, or boiled in a bag, really. And they weren't baked at all. And they weren't jiggly puddings like chocolate puddings or vanilla puddings. They were these doughy, dense, noodly consistency cake-like things that were just boiled. That's great. I've always wanted to do it. And I've been considering for years now buying myself a pudding bag. Kind of like bread pudding, yeah. Except not. I think it would just be very fun to make a bread, or not a bread pudding, a fig pudding. A figgy pudding. And, like, seeing them fail from time to time, it's just fantastic. Like, I don't want to see them fail, but I like seeing them fail, because they're not afraid to actually show what it would be like in the old days if you did fail. Yeah. So I remember one of the Christmas puddings, all of the currants ended up, I guess, rising to the top and being in a layer. And that's a very easy thing to fix in baking. Whenever you're adding fruits to a batter, coat them in flour before you add them to the batter. And they should stay where they are in the batter. A lot better. But back in the old days, there weren't really recipe books telling you to do that. Yeah, flour. It's very simple, right? It's very easy to do. So yeah, I really enjoy those channels. I really enjoy Tasting History. And I'll tell you another one I really like. You know that trick? Yeah, I always forget to. I always freeze my blueberries, but I always forget to coat them in flour when I'm making muffins. Usually it doesn't come back to bite me in muffins. But in a wetter dough, it can really save your hide. No pun intended. Another channel I really liked, it's kind of in a similar vein, was Food Wishes, right? Chef John is just a treasure. He's a wonderful entertainer, and he's very good at what he does. I highly recommend Food Wishes. It's one of the channels that I've been watching for the longest, really. Food Wishes is... I won't say it's the place where I got my start with cooking, because it's not. But when I started doing things like breads and other things like that, Food Wishes was my first go. Yes, Food Wishes. Chef John does some pretty interesting things. He can deconstruct things, or he can change them slightly to make them easier. It's a very intro-level friendly kind of cooking channel, and I really appreciate the humor and the cadence of Chef John's voice. Foodwishes.com. It's very melodical. I can't do it. Yeah, but I really enjoy listening to him. He just seems like such a nice guy, you know? Like, I'd love to learn how to cook from him. That's what it makes it feel like. Like, there are a lot of better chefs, probably. By which I mean... Okay, I can't say better, but I mean a lot more textbook. A lot more standardized. But he's kind of just there and doing his own thing. I love that. Yeah. I love seeing when people do unique things. Uh, and that brings me back to my topic, doesn't it? um, Tasting history and Townsend's. I really appreciate that they bring back these traditional foods and drinks, and the history and culture of it as well. These things might have been lost from the average American palate for hundreds of years, right? Some of these things go back to the 17th century or even earlier. And you'd never know what they taste like unless you make it yourself. That's where I am with my wine and home brewing. There are unique things out there that I'll never get to taste unless I make them myself. Recipes from Europe and America. Things like dandelion wine, of course, but also alcoholic root beer. How often do you see an actual alcoholic root beer? Very rarely, because apparently root beer is a regional thing anyway. But I've made alcoholic root beer, I've made dandelion wine, and I've made raisin wine, which used to be a staple, right? If you think about it, raisin wine was probably more common in some places than a grape wine, because raisins are preserved. You love root beer? Root beer is very distinctive, and a lot of people don't like it. It tastes medicinal to some people, but I really enjoy it. In fact, recently I bought a bunch of sassafras candies, and unfortunately, the sassafras is artificial flavoring, because the FDA has banned saffrol, because it's apparently carcinogenic. I don't care. Give me my original root beer flavoring, please. But the sassafras candies aren't bad. They do kind of taste like root beer, because sassafras is pretty much the major flavoring of a typical root beer. Other things include anise and fennel. Yeah, some of them include fennel. In fact, that's what I used for my root beers when I made alcoholic root beers. I would use sassafras tea, and I would use anise and fennel seed. Yeah, very good stuff. Traditionally, vanilla has been added. That's more of a soft drink edition. So there is no vanilla in the traditional root beers that I made. But I imagine it would probably taste fairly good, yeah. Uh, Point is, you'll never get to taste it unless you make it yourself. These recipes and their flavors are pretty much being lost to time, and if you don't do it yourself, you'll never experience it. Which makes me feel bad, because I want to. So I have made them. And yes, my personal favorite is a weird one. My personal favorite wine that I have made is, of course, coffee wine. Speaking of, let's take a sip. Hmm. Yes. Yes, very good. Coffee wine is very easy to make for me because I've made it so much. Um, I know how exactly to make it. There aren't any variances in sugar, so I can very quickly make a batch of coffee wine. It sounds horrible, and it kind of is. uh, what I do is I brew the coffee, and then I add exactly the same amount of sugar every time, and I ferment it. The flavor is unlike any other wine I've ever had. I think I used to call it bitter scorpion venom. But it definitely has hints of olive brine. And when I say hints, I mean it kind of smacks you over the head with this salty, briny flavor. Very mineralic. But fermented coffee kind of has this sweet flavor. And it's not the sugar in the coffee because I've confirmed it. There is no sugar in my wine. Yes, one of my coffee wine tasting shorts, I think it was. I like olives too. Olives are great. Most people probably would not enjoy the mineralic taste in their wines, but those are actual traditional tasting notes for wine tasters out there. Yeah. Brininess and a little bit of mineral flavor is sometimes a good thing for the rounding of a wine. In my case, it's very unbalanced. Um, the taste is awful. I'm not gonna lie to you. It tastes best when it's warm, and you can barely taste it. Like, there are a lot of cultures out there that drink hot alcohol, and it's really a recent thing in America where we don't. Uh, it used to be the case in America that, much like parts of Europe, they would make hot alcohol, whether it be hot ciders or mulled wines. They would do that. They would heat up their alcohol, and they would add spices, and they would enjoy it that way. Recently, Americans do not do that, as in the last 100 years or so. But, you know, some of that culture still survives. And of course, sake is best consumed around 100, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So there is that culture in Japan of warmed alcohol. Um, but I do like it fast warm. Yes, sake is the only one you've tried. Yeah, it's very good. I very much like a nice rice wine warmed up. Not just, traditional sake, but any rice wine. I feel like they're best warm. But yeah, warm sake is great. Um, when you heat something, or when you chill it past a certain point, your taste buds work less effectively on it, right? They're mostly registering cold or hot. So the best way to actually taste everything is around room temperature, because that's what we evolved to taste. Low grade stuff is really harsh. I don't know. I can't speak on that. I'm too biased. My taste buds are off the charts awful. I can't taste anything anyway. I've made rice wine before, right? Like, I'm not talking about sake. Sake is its own thing. There's a very specific process of adding the koji to the glutinous rice, and polishing the rice has to be done specifically, and then they press everything when it's fermented. I don't do that. When I make rice wine, I just add the koji uh, with some, what is it, lactobacillus? Usually from your hands is good enough. And you just add that to the rice and throw it in a container in the dark in a slightly warm place for a month or so. And you get some really nice rice wine. Tends to be a little bit sour, fruity. Like, it's surprisingly fruity when you make rice wine from glutinous rice. Um, yeah, I've done that several times. I've always enjoyed it. I've never had a bad batch of rice wine. uh, you can let it clarify, but if you want it sweeter, having the little rice particulates, uh, leave those in because they're pretty much broken down to sugar at that point. They'll add sweetness to the rice wine. That said, if you do want to let it clarify, you can do that. Cold crashing tends to work fairly well. Cold crashing just means putting your container into the fridge, and then you can siphon off the liquid layer from the rice grains. It's very easy to... In fact, there's very little you can do wrong with rice wine. The only issue is that it relies on lactobacillus, I think, so a bacterial strain, to actually ferment properly. So the yeast, or not the yeast, the mold, the koji mold, can't actually break things down properly. It will attack the rice grains, but it needs the help of a sort of symbiotic bacteria, yeah. And, you know, those things tend to still be active after you ferment your wine. So you've got to be very careful of that. You can't store it, is the problem. You have to pasteurize it if you intend to store your own homemade rice wine for any period of time, or keep it in the fridge to keep the microbial activity to a minimum. Other than that, it is one of the wines that I suggest most to a beginner. You don't need any specialized equipment. All you need is sticky rice and some kind of koji. I like using the Chinese mold balls, I think they're called. They're just rice and mold and bacterial cultures rolled into a ball of material. And they're sold online. They're very easy to use. You crush them up. You distribute them among the steamed rice when it gets to a proper temperature. And then you just mix it up and put it into a container. You can pour off the liquid as you want. Also, you can take some of that rice after a day or two and just eat it. It's very sweet. It's very delicious. Highly recommend it. Maybe add some berries to it. It's very good. Highly recommend. Would do again. Might do it again soon. I have a bunch of sticky rice. I just haven't been making it. In fact, I have some purple Thai sticky rice, glutinous rice. Maybe I'll do that. Make some. But it's a common dessert, apparently. I don't know. That's what I was told. I like coffee wine, though, mostly because it's easy. I know the exact recipe to make every single time. And most wines make me feel cold. Sticky rice. Yeah, it's very expensive. I agree with you there. Sometimes if you go to a wholesaler, you can get... I don't want to say expired sticky rice, but sticky rice that is past its prime, maybe. And that's perfectly acceptable for usage in wines, right? That's what I do. I go to wholesalers a lot and get their goods that are about to go off. And then I'll turn those into a wine. I think that's in the spirit of food preservation that our ancestors probably did as well, right? Yeah, anytime there's an excess and it's unsold and you can make a wine out of it, do it. Make alcohol. But yeah, most alcohols make me feel cold, which I don't like. Like, most wines do make me feel cold. It's a sort of cold buzz, right? Where everything feels a bit chilled, even if you're slightly euphoric. With coffee wine, it's very different. It makes me feel warm. It makes me feel creative and human and capable of experiencing emotions. It's a drink you'll never find in stores, so you'll have to make it yourself if you ever want to experience it. Yeah, most people get the experience that they feel hot from drinking. Yeah. But that's not actually the case. The reality is that your blood vessels pretty much expand, and then you're giving off a lot more heat because of surface area, and the blood vessels are closer to the skin, giving you a flush, meaning you actually lose a lot of heat. You are getting colder. I don't know why I experience certain buzzes as cold and coffee wine is hot, but it's the only one that really does it for me, other than maybe whiskey and unaged corn liquor. Um, Here's the thing though, if you actually want to make coffee wine, the FDA doesn't really like alcohol being made with caffeine. Not since Four Loko was a thing. I'm not unique. I'm not. I'm just, you know, I'm just me. I'm not unique. There's nothing special about me. Nothing more special than anyone else. I always found it ironic, though, that the FDA doesn't like caffeine mixed with alcohol. Like, this isn't the first time they've banned a drink that mixed alcohol with stimulants. They've done that before. There used to be a thing called cocoa wine, and I think one of the most famous brands was Vin Mariani. I talk about this a lot because I think it's very interesting history. But cocoa wine was wine that was mixed with cocaine, and it used to be for, uh, if I'm remembering correctly, even some popes really liked it as an energizing tonic. However, around 1914, there were some drugs and narcotic acts in the USA. This predates Prohibition, and around 1914, if I recall correctly, these drug acts were enacted and pretty much said, no, you can't use cocaine in any of your drinks anymore. So things like Coca-Cola and cocoa wines ended up losing popularity because of that, because obviously people were not getting the same effect from their cocoa wine, even if their cocoa wine or Coca-Cola now use coca leaves for flavoring. The chemicals are very different and the effects are very different. So yeah, 1914 is when that all changed, and then Prohibition happened in the 1920s, and that just hurt the coca wine industry even more. Because not just cocaine and or cocaine-laced wines were banned, but now all wines were banned. I get it. I really do. Like, the FDA, it's probably a good idea not to mix stimulants and depressants, not to mix cocaine and alcohol, or even caffeine and alcohol like in Four Loko. It's probably not safe. It isn't. But you know what? Neither is pure ethanol. Neither is pure caffeine. And yet both of those are safe. And sure, studies do show that mixing cocaine with alcohol is more cardiotoxic than just using either of them alone, but at the same time, like, it's just another option, I think. I don't see it as a bad thing. Some people definitely shouldn't be taking them if they're on medications or on, or they have heart issues. But otherwise, I think caffeine and wine is probably okay. Probably. um, if you think about it, is it really that different from a person who's had a long night of drinking being sobered up with a black cup of coffee? Like, you see that a lot in movies and in media. Really intoxicated individual, and their friends say, all right, let's get you sobered up with a cup of coffee. Like, at that point, you're mixing alcohol and caffeine for that individual. And that's essentially what my coffee wine does. um, there are some considerations. Jekyll's thoughts? Hold on. Hold on, hold on. The sizing is wrong. I'm so glad you asked. I'm gonna talk about the science of this for a second, okay? So, you want to know my thoughts on mixing caffeine and, ethanol? Yes, I was very close. I was watching this entire time, just waiting for my opportunity to talk to you. Yeah. Here's the thing with Hyde's recipe for coffee wine. Yeah? Um, he brews his coffee and then he adds sugar, and then he ferments it with yeast, right? There are other considerations to be had when making something like a coffee wine. Chemicals are very strange sometimes, right? Here's a fun fact for you. Caffeine is an alkaloid, and like most alkaloids, caffeine is more soluble in a solution of ethanol or any other organic solvents than it is in water. Caffeine is mildly soluble in water. That's why you have to use hot water most of the time to extract a lot of caffeine from coffee. However, if you're using wine, you could use much colder temperatures and extract the same amount of the alkaloid caffeine. That said, if you use hot alcohol, you can extract even more caffeine from your coffee. That's just how alkaloids work. Different things have different solubilities in different solvents. Yeah, and caffeine is particularly soluble in organic solvents like ethanol. So, you might be tempted to think that Hyde's recipe for coffee wine would increase the caffeine over just having a cup of coffee after drinking alcohol. But you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Doesn't know how cameras work? I know how cameras work. I know what I'm doing. But you're wrong because the coffee is already brewed. If the coffee beans were still in the solution, then maybe they would extract more in an alcohol. But that's not the case. The coffee is already brewed. The same amount of caffeine is going to exist in the solution, whether it's fermented and has alcohol or not. So that's not even a consideration to be had. The solvent thing is a completely moot point. Yeah. However, there are other considerations to be had here, right? Drug interactions often depend on consumption intervals, right? So, someone who drinks coffee at the same time as they're drinking wine will have the same chemicals interacting at roughly the same time. That might be an issue, right? That might be why there are increased cardiotoxic effects when people, for example, drink wine or alcohol and then use a narcotic substance like cocaine. There are plenty of studies on that, and that's true. That would be the only consideration to be had here. um, However, there might be other considerations that I'm not including. For example, there are effects on the molecules themselves. Fermentation is a complex process, usually governed by life, and life has a lot of weird things going on. So it's possible that the alkaloids could be changed in some way in the coffee that is fermented by the fermentation process. I don't know. That might be the case. It's highly, or it's entirely plausible. I'll say that. I don't know if there's any good likelihood or any good reason to think about this, but it's possible that the caffeine could be made more bioavailable, which would be an issue. Bioavailability is basically like the body can take it up more easily, more quickly, and both of those could be problems. More easily is different from more quickly, right? More quickly means you can get a higher dose in a shorter period of time, which can be a problem because there are lethal doses to all chemicals out there, including water. There's a lethal dose of water. But more efficiently means that you can get more into the body at the same time as well. So they're kind of different, but they're kind of related. Yeah. There can also be things like complexing or uh, chemical reactions that occur. Perhaps you could turn something into a salt that is more soluble in the human body. That's a possibility, that the simultaneous consumption of a fermented coffee um, with the simultaneous consumption of coffee or caffeine and ethanol might be a concern over just the consumption of caffeine and ethanol separately after a period of time. So yeah, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty much the same. There are considerations to be had there. Yeah. So I hope that cleared that up for you. That's probably what Jack would say about all that. Personally, I would not recommend coffee wine to anyone with a heart condition or on certain medications where a heart condition might be likely, or on blood thinners, probably. Using stimulants and depressants at the same time, even legal ones, can be dangerous. A lot of my childhood comedy heroes actually died because they abused stimulants and depressants at the same time. They were doing something called speedballing, and that's not good. In a lot of cases, it confuses the heart muscles. It doesn't know whether to speed up or to go faster, and it can lead to heart attacks, cardiac arrest, that kind of thing. And there are probably some effects on cognitive ability as well. You're welcome. I'm glad I could be of help. Usually I don't talk too much about chemistry because organic chemistry is, not my strong point. But I do know a few things about alkaloids and, solvents. Yeah. Yeah, he mostly knows about humors and, natural sciences. His information's a bit outdated, yeah? I don't know if I'd trust him for too much. However, I am confident in his information about things such as organic solvents and caffeine, alkaloids. There are other alkaloids out there, and they all have similar effects to... Well, I don't want to say similar effects to caffeine, because that's not the case, but alkaloids are a complex system. So there might be some alkaloids that I don't know about that are in fact not more soluble. For whatever reason, some strange quirk of chemical structuring, they might not be more soluble than alcohol. They might be more soluble in water. But, you know, I think that's where we're going to end it for today. I'm very happy that I got to talk about home brewing and winemaking. I really like the topic. I really enjoy the hobby. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Because this is a fishing Hyde stream, right? Look at how tiny I am. So tiny. Yeah, there we go. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too. I know some of that probably was a bit complex. Like, that's pushing the boundaries of my own knowledge on chemistry. Yeah, I really tried my best there. I don't think I can go much further. I hope it was enjoyable. Even if I was a bit lower energy, I enjoyed the topics, I enjoyed being here, I enjoyed streaming. It was very fun talking about homebrewing. Maybe I'll do it again sometime. Probably will. But for now, yeah, we're gonna end it. I'm glad if it was enjoyable, yeah. But for now, hide out. I love you all, and I will see you all again next time. Good night.